Why don't we just start going down the line and saying how we got involved in art to begin with?
Art to begin with.
Yes.
Alright.
Just brief introduction of who you are and how you started being an artist.
Hey everyone, my name's Lucas Durham. I'm actually the odd case. I'm actually a fourth generation artist.
Oh, wow.
First generation commercial artist. So it's kind of been in my blood. So I've been drawing since I was 3. Started doing it full-time freelance about 5 years ago. Yeah, and that's kind of been it. Just hunting after different art directors and such.
Oh.
I'm Kat Brimlin. I started out as a Magic kid, like everybody that wants to work for Magic the Gathering. I went to school, Lucas and I actually went to the same college and graduated together, which was awesome.
Yeah.
But my senior year I got picked up by a publisher. I've been trolling Gen Con since it moved here to Indy in 2004. So I was really well acquainted with the artists and the art directors. They'd see me every year at Gen Con. Just through my connections with networking, a lot of my friends in the gaming industry that I've gamed with, like across platforms and stuff, one of them introduced me to a game developer who was with either Cryptic Studios or Evil Hat. It had that weird like / joint company. I got my first publication work with them before I graduated, and then I took a 2-year hiatus after graduation from burnout where I didn't do any work and got tricked back into doing it by coloring for a webcomic, and from there doing conventions again, and they're like, hey, you should make stuff to sell, and I'm like, yeah, I should. So I started doing pinup work, and then from there just my work's kind of started to develop more towards rediscovering like my personal tastes and where I want to take my artwork, and yeah, that's about it.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Nolan Nasser, and first off, I just want to say thank you guys so much for showing up this morning. I got started in art. I mean, I was always the kid that was drawing in elementary school and in high school I was taking art classes and such, and so I've always kind of had like a little bit of a background in art. But actually, I went to college for web design, and about 4 years into college, I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to do this, and just switched gears and started teaching myself how to digitally paint. And granted, I had a little bit of a background from like high school and taking art classes and things like that, so like, I knew what I was like getting into. So I had like that background helped. But yeah, my fifth year of college, I ended up teaching myself how to digitally paint, and pretty much haven't looked back since then. That was kind of how I got into it. There's more if we're talking about how we got into tabletop gaming, but that might be another topic. Yep. I'll save it for later.
So I'm Adam Robertaro. I was also the kid that was drawing through elementary school, high school, and then once I started taking my art seriously, I was setting my bar really, really high and submitting to places like Blizzard or Wizards of the Coast way before I was ready.
Yeah. Awesome.
And obviously that didn't pan out, and so then my friend and I, Christopher, made Sentinels of the Multiverse, and sort of paved our own way into that. So yeah, if you can't find a job, make one.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, so why don't we talk about how we got into the industry from that? So I basically had kind of an exception with that because I was part creator of this game. So how did you guys get into doing that specifically?
So I started out when I decided that I wanted to go into illustration rather than web design. I was like, okay, I really need to make a name for myself in this. And I had already started. I'd been a really competitive Magic player, and so I knew a lot of people that were in the gaming world already. And so when they found out that I was doing art, that I was trying to become an artist, it was really helpful, like having those connections, and they would, introduce me to people and things like that. And I remember one of my friends, he was the owner of a gaming store, and he was like, he saw a call for artists from this company, and he's like, hey, here's this company that's really cool. You should, apply to this company. It just so happened to be Greater Than Games. It's like three years ago now that I applied for it. And he's like, yeah, apply for it, and I'll put in a good word for you, whatever. And and so that was my first big gig in tabletop gaming was through Adam on Spirit Island. And there's been since then that that is paid. That honestly, that job has paved the way for other work with other companies and things like that. And but yeah, it was just lots of putting feelers out there. Meeting lots of people in the industry. Working connections and things like that to eventually land my first job in the industry.
I have a similar story to yours, actually. So I, outside of high school, I worked outside of a game shop. And I worked at a kiosk in a mall, and I had nothing better to do. So I used to hang out in the game shop during work hours and game with the guys in there. And they got me into all sorts of games, including Magic the Gathering. And I was already a fan of some of the artists from that game, the old school artists. And I'd also just recently applied or enrolled, I guess, in college for art. And so I kind of always knew that games were a passion of mine on the side. I'd also been involved with the game group pretty much up until maybe 2010, when I actually had to start trying to game less and work more. But like I said, through networking, a lot of people I knew other people. A lot of the gamers that I knew were either also like in press for podcasting or helping develop games, or they were writing code for or developing software for stuff. And my first year, actually I think it was at Origins Game Fair in Columbus, my friend David walked me over to Evil Hat and introduced me to the art director. And he was working on Champions, their RPG books that they were releasing after the video game. And he was looking for people that did character art for the book. And I took the job with them. I think I got like 26 pieces off the bat across 3 different books. And that was how I got my foot in the door. And unfortunately, that was about right when I got burnt out after graduation, so I didn't do work for 2 years. And then when I eventually did started working again, I was taking games kind of as they came in, if they were of interest. And the nice thing has been I've had a lot more time to just work on my own personal work or things that interest me. And so I've been getting hired more because people look at my personal style or what interests me. And a year and a half ago, I landed probably the sweetest job ever from my point of view, because I do the pinup work and I'm also a gamer. A company called Prettiest Princess Games was doing Glamazons and the Curse of the Chainmail Bikini. And yeah, he's like, our artist just can't finish the game, and he happened to walk by my booth and he's like, oh my god, like this is exactly what we need for our game. And instead of, originally got hired on to just finish the game, and then he decided he wanted it to look more, what's the word?
Cohesive?
Yes, cohesive, thank you. So he just had me do all the rest of the art that had already been done, and he kind of sweetened the pot because I think my contract with them got extended 3 times. So that was really cool, and like, for me that was like a huge like dream job, because I'm like, I love pinups, I game, I like the concept of this game, and it also gave me a chance to do paper dolls, which I've been wanting to do. So from there, I kind of haven't taken too much work because I've been trying to do my own. But thanks to Lucas, again with networking, he's like, the guys at Greater Than Games need a bunch of work done quickly, and he's like, I told him you work super fast. And so, yeah, so he sent him my information, and I got contacted by you guys, and you guys were like, it was a little hectic at first because like everybody was like doing stuff, and it took a while to get emails back and forth, but it was fun, yeah. And you guys have been super easy to work with as far as any clients go, which is
That's nice. Yeah. Well, I guess my story starts. I had an internship with the Bradford Exchange right out of school, which you probably have never heard of the company, but they do stuff like plates for Thomas Kincaid, and they'll do like Betty Boop purses and stuff. So that's kind of how Star Trek jackets. Yeah. But anyway, so I kind of was there for. They hired me to be an intern for 3 months, and they extended it out to 7. And at that point, I was just insanely bogged down, and I was like, Kat, I need to get out of here. And she's like, well, why don't you come to Gen Con? Because I know you like to do the fantasy stuff, and I can introduce you to some of the artists here, and they could kind of push your portfolio in a different direction. I'm like, okay. So she shows up like the Friday, right? You usually come Thursday, Friday to do your gaming, and I had to get off of work. Came Saturday, and she's like, "Hey, I'm glad you're here. Okay, you bring your portfolio? Yeah. Okay. You should get to the other hall because you had a interview with Fantasy Flight in 15 minutes. I just signed you up." So,
That's awesome.
Surprise!
So yeah, she surprised me with that. I walked in totally cold, and Zoe Robinson, the art director at that point, was looking through my portfolio, and it's like, "Yeah, I can tell you were a student, but you do tech really well." And that's the first time I got a Netrunner card. Was about 3 months later. She contacted me, and I've been kind of slowly working my way, networking with different art directors here. Gen Con's sort of my I call it like my professional birthday or something, because
Nice.
every year I come back and I talk to like some other person, like other art director, other company, and they're like, "Okay, yeah, your stuff is ready for us." So last year I got some work with Game Paizo, and finally got a Pathfinder piece.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's kind of my thing. I just kind of been networking here. So
Awesome.
yeah.
So something that always was a limiting factor to me when I was trying to get work, freelance, and you're all freelance artists.
Yep. Yes.
Was setting my prices
Yeah.
and how much to charge. Was I charging too much?
Mm-hmm.
Was I not charging enough? Were people not taking me seriously because I wasn't charging enough? How do you set your prices to attract work?
Interesting you
Yeah.
brought that up.
There's
There's an organization that started a couple of years back called Art Pact. It's the Professional Artists
client toolkit.
Client Toolkit. Thank you.
I've memorized it by now.
There's
Yeah.
a stack of these here.
So any illustrators interested, it's a website dedicated to helping freelancers start setting their own wages. It has free contracts.
It's kind of like an Angie's List for artists. It has kind of cross industries, but it's dependent on working artists that have worked with companies to actually make reviews, I guess. But it's got a bunch of companies listed. There's sample contracts. There's a breakdown of terminology for if you get a contract. Because most likely, if you work for someone, they're going to give you a contract. And that contract's not always good. I'm not gonna lie, it's usually not beneficial to the artist ever, especially in games. Games gets really picky. You start losing a lot of your rights to publish work or do prints. And the funny thing is, with setting prices, and this is a huge pet peeve of mine at conventions and stuff. When I get people that come up and ask me what my rates are at my table, I get really upset. I always tell them that they should email me because I need to know what the terms and conditions are of the contract, because that helps me gauge what my price is going to be.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm willing to work for a little bit less depending on if I get more lenient with rights and usages and stuff. And that's kind of across the board, but Art Pact will usually have, if you go to review a company, or see what people have reviewed, you can see there's a star system, and it will usually say this company has 1 star, and it's because they pay between this and this for this type of work. And it'll kind of go through the contract, and it'll be how easy was it to get in touch with the art director? What was the timeline for a pay? And stuff like that. So that's been hugely useful.
Yeah.
It used to be $30 for a membership, but it's now completely free website.
Funded by donations.
There are actually a couple other really good websites. There's Drawn and Drafted, which is run by I guess 2 art directors.
Well, there's
right?
a whole committee of art directors. There's 2
Yeah,
at the head.
there's Dear Art Director. It's a Tumblr page where you can go through and see if people have submitted questions to anonymous art directors who have answered back. You can also submit questions, but it's good to scroll through or maybe do a search and see if somebody's already asked a question.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are a ton of great online resources just in the past couple years. A lot of times the art directors are not your enemy. they're trying to do what they can for you, but their hands are tied because they have all of the upper crust that they have to work with.
Right. But the main thing, especially for someone starting off as a freelancer, that I try to tell people is that, you're not just selling the work itself. Like, you're not just selling, I'm putting 20 hours into such and such, and I'm just gonna bill, technically you're supposed to do like $15 an hour per,
At least. Yeah.
15 to 50 is actually supposed to be the bottom margin if you're doing freelance.
Supposed to be. Not for games though.
Yeah. But on top of that, you're not just doing the artwork, you're selling the license itself, because under US copyright law, you immediately own everything. But that's where the contract negotiation comes in. Actually, Graven Games has actually been one of the best companies to negotiate with. They treat their artists really well, and really, we've been saying that you guys should be like the gold standard, for in that regard. So
yeah, actually,
absolutely. I like
and
that.
it's funny because it seems like a trend that the smaller press publishers are more willing to negotiate because you guys are kind of in the same boat, and you guys still have your hands tied, with budgets and stuff, but you guys are more willing to negotiate with us more, or you understand that the risk, because a big problem in the industry, and this is not just our industry, but ours is probably one of the worst, is the companies always expect you to take all the risks for them.
yeah.
And you get the least amount, I guess, back. So it's more risky because sometimes you won't get paid. Lucas, you actually have a good one on this.
I'm not going to name the company, but their contract basically was.
Well, you didn't read the contract.
Way to call them out. But that's good. That's good. Read contracts.
Read contracts.
Always read contracts.
So I didn't read the contract thoroughly because I had some friends who worked with the company before, and they had said, okay, this company gives a net 90. So after approval, you get paid. My contract read, it is net 90 after hard copy publication. So they released the PDF about 3 months before the hard copy was released.
But the
And
problem
then
with that,
it was delayed. So after doing my initial work, I was not paid for about a year and a half.
and a bigger
afterwards.
problem with stuff like that is some companies will not release a hard copy.
Right.
So you did all that work for nothing. And there's nothing you can do because you are bound by contract. So it's really important to read your contracts,
Yeah.
which you read
Good
now.
Yeah. Totally.
It's just a business guide for a company that's BS. So if a company's trying to do that, it's like,
But
Yeah.
you'll find as you guys start to if you go on to ArtPact and you read reviews, that's the easiest kind of red flag thing.
Yeah.
But if you talk to artists, and as long as you're not asking them how much money did you make on this,
I straight up ask.
I never do. I always ask what range,
Mhm.
because that's a much fairer thing, because I don't ask that one because I also don't know what the terms are, but it's kind of a rude question.
Well,
to ask.
a lot of people consider it a rude question to ask,
Yeah.
but my philosophy is unless you start just being blatant about it, no one actually knows what we're
Right.
like.
But I always
paying
ask,
each other.
I always ask
It's-
what price
I mean,
range.
there's ways to do it politely.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely.
And but the more information you have, the better equipped you are to get not only giving yourself a reasonable rate, but also giving the company itself a reasonable rate.
Right.
This is a really small community of artists,
Yeah.
and
Yes.
it really does help to be open with each other.
Yeah.
And you'll find, as you grow in the industry and things like that, a lot of artists are very open to talking about
Yeah.
their numbers and things like that. Obviously, don't ask the first time you meet an artist or something. Be like, oh, how much money do you make on this project? It's like,
Yeah.
well,
I mean,
take me
you
out to
can-
dinner first, but
Yeah.
no.
all the artists are over at the Hyatt usually
Yeah.
afterwards, so
Right,
buy
get a
them
few
3
drinks for
drinks
them.
and
Yep.
you're fucking golden to ask them any
Yeah.
question they want.
They'll
Actually,
blab, so.
at the art show, you could probably just walk up to someone and just be like, hey, I'm interested in art, or I'm an artist too. But the easy thing is talk about their work first, and then mention you're an artist, or if you have a business card in your hand that has your artwork on it, most likely they're going to ask you if you have a portfolio. So you don't have to ask for a review. They'll volunteer that if you hand them, a business card or a sample that has your work on it.
If they're not super busy, like
Yeah,
if
if
their
they're
booth
not
isn't
super
slammed,
busy.
definitely.
Do we have a question? Do you have a question? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, speaking of portfolios, do you have any good resources for like professional looking portfolios that aren't DeviantArt or Tumblr?
Squarespace.
Squarespace
Again,
is probably
Pact does have some articles on that too.
Yeah, so yeah, there are
um,
articles from artists on ArtPact that kind of go into some things. Like Jeremy McHugh had a thing about why he stepped away from working with a particular company, and he has it completely broken down. And again, that kind of goes back with the risk. Is he had all the risk on his side, and he's like, it was unfair to get paid the amount that I did, having worked with the company for so long, and then to get paid, within, I think it was like a net 90 on publication, but then it was delayed. He didn't get paid for like another 3 months afterwards, and trying to, if you don't have it written in your contract that like if they're late paying you, they owe you like extra, and even then sometimes it's hard because most companies will have tons of lawyers on their side, and usually you just have you. And that's kind of an issue that he talks about in one of the articles. Actually, I think it's like a 3-part article on there. But yeah, a lot of information's on ArtPact.
Another great place for portfolio stuff is One Fantastic Week. You can actually talk to the two. It's an online YouTube/podcast run by Sam Flegel and Pete Moorbacher. They're both in the Artist Alley.
Yeah. And they also run a workshop now in November.
Yeah.
Which it's full up for this year, but
It's a good. Their episodes are great because you actually get to talk to. They interview like 2/3 of the artists in this Artist Alley and a lot of other artists.
yeah, they
and
talk
art
to
directors.
art directors, gallery owners.
Yeah, they actually just had a recent episode where Lauren Penapento, who's a big art director from New York,
for Orbit, yeah.
basically went through a bunch of different portfolios and explained, okay, this is good, this is bad.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They do CritCast like every
Yeah.
couple weeks where they'll say, hey, we're gonna do a CritCast episode, and you can submit a link to your portfolio. And I think it's the night before. They just kind of randomly choose like a couple, and then they have either an art director or their guest artist, and they'll kind of critique your portfolio. Usually, like it's the online portfolio, and they'll be like, don't use this website, or don't use Lightbox. They all hate Lightbox. But there's a lot of good information on there, and again, it's a free group to join because it's on Facebook. They also have, I think, a side website.
Yeah.
In terms of grand swaths, from an art director perspective, when I look at a portfolio, what I want to see above anything is variety. If I get something that is just ponies all the way through, I immediately go, oh, this person can only draw ponies.
But if you do, like, find a company that only does ponies.
Right. Actually, and that's actually a good point too, because like Sarah Robinson said that she loves people that are just one thing for Pathfinder. Like if you are now, I mean, they have Todd Lockwood and Wayne Reynolds for Dragon Guy, so that's out. But if you, especially like if you can draw a guy and a horse, like in this industry, like you will never go.
And that's, it's dependent on the art directors and the companies. A lot of times they'll tell you like, whatever you're interested in doing, do that and show me your portfolio. Because if like with me, I feel like every company I work for will always give me a flower piece. And I hate painting flowers, and I think it's because I'm a female and I'm a watercolorist. They assume we'll give you a flower piece, and I always do it because usually it's just the one. But sometimes I've had, you do. every single company, with the exception of I think actually no, Prettiest Princess wanted me to do a flower monster card, and I'm like, how about this other thing? And they're like, oh, that's a great idea.
I love painting flowers.
I like painting the flowers, but I don't. But
you
if
don't like
it's
being
one,
a flower person.
Yeah, if it's one card, like I'll do it. It's not a big deal. But a lot of times, and especially if you talk to the artists in the Artist Alley, they'll be like, what do you like to do? Because that's what you should do. And Christopher Burdett is a good example because he only does monsters.
Yeah.
And like monster, like aliens and stuff. So they know, like, oh, we need a monster. Well, we'll call Chris, and that's a great thing.
Yeah.
And again, like for some of the smaller press companies where they have more of a, I guess, working stable of freelancers, variety is better because
Yeah.
you're gonna
When
take
I'm-
whatever cards that they need you to do.
Right. When I'm
Yeah.
hiring, I'm hiring for whole projects usually with smaller companies like this.
And that's why I did a flower
So-
card when you guys offered it to me. 'Cause, I'm like, well, it's
So-
just one card.
Adam, when
So
you
noted, give you the flowers.
yeah, exactly. Adam, when you said you want to see a variety of things, are you talking about a variety of subject matter or a variety of style?
Style helps honestly. Also, if I see you can do watercolor and oil and something super cartoony, then I know that this person's flexible and but that doesn't something like that doesn't limit me from looking at a portfolio. It a lot of times will go if I say I'm looking for watercolor for this game.
Right.
Then and you send me something cartoony, then I go, oh, okay, I just like this person's good, but I'm not using this. So that is molding your portfolio to what job you're trying to get, though. Also,
Yeah.
And I feel like that's really important, especially like in the board game industry. When
Yeah.
you're going to board game publishers specifically, they're publishing all sorts of different board games and stuff like that. And so the subject matter varies, the style of each game will vary if it's not in the same IP. Whereas when you go to
Right.
people like Pathfinder,
Yeah.
It's Magic
It's
and things
very
like that, very
established.
set. Yeah,
It's
so
branding. So Magic the Gathering and Paizo, they have a specific brand that they're trying to carry.
They literally
And-
give you style guides
Yes.
when you work with them.
And a lot of companies do that, including book publishers and magazines. Although those are different because they usually do more of an eclectic. But what's really important is researching your client, whether they're actually your client now or preferably before they're your client now. But like any future clients that you're interested in, look at what they're producing. And like you're right for board games, like Mayfair Games and you guys, and they have a range of styles. And so even if you have more of a cohesive portfolio of work that you're really trying to like, this is what I do, but you can do this stuff. What's nice is to have a hidden like
Secondary portfolio.
secondary portfolio where you show, because like I actually don't have any of my game art pieces that I can show on my website ever. But if art directors, if I know that they're going to want to see what I've done, I do have a collection of stuff that I can send them a special link to a specific portfolio, and that's called a target portfolio. So it's like, oh, you want to see stuff that I've done for other publishers, go to this link. And that is too, like sometimes you have to read it. Sometimes they'll see if you have a particular style, like my portfolio is getting pretty cohesive with what I want to do. But I also have like a link on mine where it has more of a cartoonish style. So you can kind of see that cross. And usually, and it's hit or miss. Usually an art director, some don't like that because they don't know which style they're going to get. But a good art director will ask you, or tell you that they prefer you to do it in this style. And I had that when I worked for Glamazons. He came up, saw my stuff, was interested in pinup. When he emailed me, he reminded me that he was more interested in my pinup work specifically for the game and not, the stuff that I've also been working on, kind of my more, I guess, dressed up.
yeah, that's something I've definitely learned. Also, if anyone's interested in being an art director at all, be very, very specific with your artists about what you
Yeah.
want.
Yes.
The more information you give them, the better.
Yeah, and as an artist, ask a lot of questions
Mhm.
because it's better to ask questions and get things cleared up.
Mhm.
Or if you can, like, be like, hey, can I send you my number and talk to you for a quick 5 minutes? Because usually that's faster than email.
Mhm.
Always try to have a clear form of communication because a lot of stuff happens or sometimes you think you know what they're talking about and you actually have no idea.
Yeah.
Or you're just somebody's not clear on the message you're trying to say, so.
Anyone else? Questions? Yeah.
In that vein, if you're in the middle of a project, like you're doing sketches for something, I assume that it's probably a good idea to show those sketches as frequently as possible.
Yeah,
to keep
so
communication
the way
going,
that I
or-
work with artists is I have basically 2 stages that I go through as I approve sketch and I approve finals. A lot of artists will check in more often than that, but usually I'm pretty confident in that jump. But
the standard is about, you usually send in a sketch stage.
Yeah.
Sometimes an art director will ask for like a color comp, and then you go straight to final from there.
Yeah.
It's usually the standard.
It also depends on your workability. Like, I hadn't worked with you guys before, and also as a traditional watercolorist, I can't backtrack easily. So, like, I think also because we kind of had a bit of a delay because, we were both really busy with stuff. Like, actually, as soon as I got back, because I was at a convention, I signed my contract with you guys and then did a convention for a week. And then that Monday, I sent you guys thumbnails of what I was planning to do. And then the next day, I did pencil sketches and sent them in. And then usually that's where, like, I think you had me revise a card slightly. And then I asked if you guys wanted color studies or if you wanted to check in, because once I start painting, once I get the initial glazes down, if anything needs to be changed, it has to be in that stage.
right.
And you guys were cool. Like, you guys were more like, just kind of, we trust you. Like, we've seen your portfolio, and that's a big, like, that's a big thing. Like, especially with a new client to say, I trust your process or whatever. Go ahead. Sometimes you will have clients that are a little bit more particular and they want to see stages or, and that's another thing with like ArtPact. You'll see like there will be revision fees added in the contracts, which most companies won't put in because then they have to pay you past a certain amount. And that can be good to put in because sometimes companies will just keep running with revisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, from my perspective, I never want to have to give revisions.
Right.
I just want to
Do
come
it
out
right
right the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But they happen, I mean.
yeah,
Yeah.
and they do. And with traditional media,
Right.
it is a lot more important to have more steps of check-ins than it is with digital media.
How many people here are digital artists or interested in digital art? Is it a large number of people? Yeah, that's yeah. Digital art is really convenient in that sense. I mean, I just recently turned in a piece to Greater Than Games for Fate of the Elder Gods, and the art directors on that game came back to me and they were like, it was a different art director other than Adam, and he was like, hey, we really love this piece, it's completely finished. And he's like, can you completely change the color scheme? And it's like, I mean, I can. It's a good thing this is digital. You can definitely do it.
If you're a traditional artist, like I
Yeah.
highly recommend if you're going to work in the game industry, at least understanding how you can correct things on the computer.
Sure,
Yeah.
Or even doing digital color comps and digital
Yeah.
sketches and stuff like that is so helpful. I know I've learned that from other traditional artists.
Yeah. Also a big thing too is look at your work on your phone because a lot of times your piece is going to be small, especially if it's card art. So if you look at your piece on your phone, check to make sure one, it's holding together, but two, look at it in grayscale because sometimes publishers will print in grayscale or black and white, but it's always good to check grayscale anyways to see that you're getting the tonal range. I struggled with that for a long time, and I know that that's kind of like a big thing for even seasoned artists. They'll be like, sometimes I'll see what it looks like in grayscale, or they'll do a grayscale comp before, but looking at it on your phone is great because it's going to be closer to the actual size.
Value is super important
Yes.
in card art. So.
Yeah, go ahead.
What type of feedback as an art director do you tend to give? Is it things like color, or is it stuff like this outfit on this character doesn't really fit the genre? Or
Well, so most of what I've given with Spirit Island in particular is I'm dealing with a lot of weird concepts sometimes because these are like elemental spirit. And so was the one that I gave you the talking flowers?
Yeah. Well, at least they're
Flowers
different.
with like weird mouths on them.
Yeah.
That I had to get, but
That's okay. I watched Alice in Wonderland right before I did this sketch.
so most of what my feedback is okay. This isn't really reading. The idea that I had for it is not translating in your piece, basically. And so, I often will ask them at that point what like, they think might work better, or Yeah, and so and then the other note is like clean up this area more. That's my most common note. Really, is clean this up a little more.
For costumes, though, like I mentioned style guides earlier. If you do have some, and actually you guys sent some previously done cards,
Yeah,
so-
yeah.
which if
Helps.
you have any,
Yeah.
I mean, we're visual people,
Right.
so it's
Yeah.
much easier to be like, this is kind of what we're going for.
Yeah.
And
And if
it's
you
usually-
even if you can't draw it, like I've worked with art directors where they'll have mood boards and
Yeah.
they'll either be created specifically for the game, like the style guides, or they'll kind of like copy and paste stuff from like movies or whatever, and that's helpful because you're not going to copy it, but it gives you an idea of the mood or the style that they want without them being able to verbally get that point across to you.
Yeah.
And yeah, like we're visual people and art directors are obviously also visual people, so
Yeah.
that's kind of the best way
Yeah.
to get your point across.
And just a note to the freelancers, like, you know, part of you as a professional is having a large vocabulary of different costumes and everything else. So,
Yeah, I live in reference.
I love taking on
Pinterest
assignments
is your
from
friend.
yes.
Yeah.
Pinterest is not just for recipes and wedding cakes.
Yeah.
Like
Pinterest is for mood boards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like 40 boards.
Surprisingly good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like I love working in the game industry because, you know, one week you'll be painting pirates and then the next week you'll be, you know, creating cyberpunk trolls. And like it's great because it allows you to I love it because it kind of educates me on everything that's out there.
Yeah.
And you know, I love bringing that back to my own art. So.
Melissa's questions? Go for it. Yeah.
I have like questions about the business side. So,
You're rocking it, by the way, taking all these notes.
Yeah.
I just want to say kudos to you.
so how much of your time your working time is spent hunting down these jobs versus doing the actual work? Like, how much is the business side of it?
Hunting down work gets easier.
It depends too.
Yeah. And it also depends on like what you're going for
Okay.
too, because like if you're going for a specific company, like all your time should be like spent like narrowing in, targeting in on them. Like you mentioned Blizzard, like you have to get that house style just right.
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 But if you're doing some general client, I think for like the first couple of years, what I did was I would have a couple of bread and butter assignments. Like I mentioned, working for that collectible company.
Yeah.
So I would spend 3-4 days of the week working on purses, and then the rest of the week I'd be okay. Who's this art director? Like phoning in on not just the company, but the art director specifically, and creating a portfolio that's dedicated to them. So, and another thing to keep in mind with this, just general things with illustration is it takes time.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks you got to get right out of school and get right into the company. I found it's taken me about 5 years to establish myself to the point where people recognize my name outside of like me handing them a business card.
Yeah. The other thing is having a face to face if you can with
Yeah.
the art director.
Yeah.
Like
That does
when
help
I
a
was
lot.
when I was
Yeah.
doing Gen Con, I did mention every year, even when I was in college, I didn't even have a portfolio.
Yeah.
Every year I talked to the artists, and after a while I started talking to art directors when I had some stuff to show them. And so I got really well acquainted with who the art directors were for specific companies.
Yeah.
And after a while too, with me, because I actually am kind of not shifting entirely away from gaming, but with my style of work, it doesn't readily apply itself to a lot of companies, or I have a harder time now figuring out like, okay, I need to look more essentially what companies have artwork that's similar to what I'm doing, or sometimes I'll even look at artists whose work I feel similar to mine, and I'll look at their client list, and I kind of like start scoping out, and that's part of doing your research.
Yeah.
But in talking to the people, they get to know you, and sometimes it's more helpful. Like I had one art director for Wizards, and he sat down with me, and he's like, you know, and I was working digitally. He's like, I can tell you don't like working digitally, but I can tell you love Magic. And he's like, at some point you're gonna have to ask yourself, do you want to change your way of working to match our style guide, or do you want to have fun and play with your watercolors, which are, great. And I took some time, I think it took 2 months, like kind of milling that over, and I made the choice, like, I love Magic the Gathering, but I don't want to change what I actually love to do. So I made the choice that I would stop pursuing that company for work. I'm still great friends with some of the art directors there and a lot of the artists that work for them, but realizing you're not right for a specific brand and coming to the conclusion of, do you want to make the change to match it, or do you want to do your own work, or do you want to find people that are right for you? That's a huge thing to figure out.
And you learn a lot of that actually meeting people in person. So like Gen Con is an amazing weekend to do that. But I think the first 2 years I spent about $3,000 to $5,000 like going to different conventions just to specifically meet art directors, because there's a lot of power in meeting someone face to face. If they can put your face to your art, every time you send them an update, like they will remember who you are.
Yep.
So
This is a really important thing for sure.
she's had her.
Go
That's
ahead.
okay. I'm very interested in what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you're, boring but kind of important question from a completely business standpoint. When it comes to, say, being a freelancer and taxes at the end of the year, that sort of thing, do you file as a freelancer? Do you have a DBA? Are you a small business?
It depends on how
Yes.
you're set up.
Okay.
It depends on how you're set up, really. Yeah.
I would recommend, so I'm the operations director, boring business stuff is like my main thing. And
This is something nobody ever asks, and it's
yeah,
super important.
It's very important.
I would give you the caveat that like, talk to an attorney. Like that's definitely a good idea.
Or
Oh, yeah.
talk to an accountant and see if you can find someone that specifically deals with artists.
But the answer basically is set up an LLC.
Yeah.
An LLC?
Yeah, be a company, don't do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and you
do
can
it
do that as a sole proprietorship.
Yeah.
But if you have a company that limits your liability, like it's usually like $40 or something to set that up, they'll give you a separate tax number, and then if it passes through directly your personal taxes, you have to talk to an accountant a little bit, makes it a little bit more complicated, but legally speaking, you're much better safe.
Yeah,
Much better.
an EIN is a really good thing.
Yeah.
Is it a good idea to register as a company even if you don't have any income yet?
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
actually,
and that's
it's
the thing.
super cheap, it allows you to separate your account from your personal account,
Okay.
which makes taxes so much easier.
Yeah, and like I actually haven't yet.
Yeah.
It's just because there's a lot of reading to do to see like what the differences are between.
Yeah.
I'll probably wind up because I think you did a sole proprietor.
I did
LLC.
you
And there's
should
different
check,
ones though.
and you should check
Yeah.
state to state, because it is different. Like I'm from Illinois, and it's much easier to do a sole proprietorship, and basically I just set up a business account and set up a business credit card, so everything like for this weekend is going on that.
Yeah.
Because I can get tax deductions because of it's going into a company.
Yeah.
You know, I can write off things from
You-
company corporate stamps.
You can still do that without being an LLC because I'm not yet, but
Yeah.
if you have a separate account that is strictly a business account, which is what I do,
Yeah.
it's easy to write off the tax deductions
It
through a
streamlines
business.
everything.
And also, when you just go to file, you can actually file through a business without being incorporated as an LLC.
Yeah.
Depending, that's why it's important to talk to an accountant. And like, yeah, eventually I will. It's just I need to figure out which one I'm going to choose. But starting out when you're not making a lot of money, it's okay to, as long as you really separate that. So like, don't use your business account for paying for anything other than business stuff. And that like that business stuff even includes like networking events, hanging out at bars, because you're still talking to people in the industry.
Books for education.
Yeah, food for conventions.
supplies,
Yeah, pretty much anything that deals with the business.
Yeah, just check your
but-
state. Check your state's. You know, some of the. I mean, did you usually list it?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things you can write off and such.
Yeah, I have a question and actually I can actually ask you. I own my own construction company for
Awesome.
almost 20 years.
Perfect.
And you can file, for most tax purposes, it doesn't make a huge difference whether you're an LLC or a sole proprietorship.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What matters is if you end up in an insurance claim or any
Yes.
kind of legal situation over
Okay.
any work or anything,
Yeah.
you're much more protected in the situation of an LLC.
Yeah.
So
As
if
they
you're
can
tracking
only-
expenses as a sole proprietorship, you're fine. It's helpful to have a separate account. You don't actually need to if you're charting things properly.
Right.
Yeah, but it's
Um,
easier.
but
It's
it makes it
easier
easier.
to have
If you're
separate
bad at
accounts.
keeping things separate, just make a completely separate thing.
Self-employed QuickBooks is
Yeah.
by far
Yeah.
the greatest cheapest thing I've ever invested in. It's $5 a month, and I haven't set up an LLC or anything yet. My accountant recommended that I don't bother with it yet. And it's like, you know, just tracking things. I have my one bank account, and I just in QuickBooks just select whether or not it's a business
QuickBooks
expense or a
is
personal
incredibly
expense. Yep.
Yeah.
Self-employed QuickBooks. Is
And I have
great.
an art-related question. As
Yeah,
well.
yeah, you have a question. Yeah, please go on.
So I have a question about sort of Gen Con approach etiquette. Like I was here
Oh,
last
yes.
year,
Uh-huh.
and like I kind of was like all excited. I was like, oh, I'm learning how to do this, and I want to talk to all these people. And I kind of was like, all right, it's Thursday morning at 10:30. I'm gonna walk up to the first booth. Boy, what a big mistake
No.
that was.
Give us a little time because we like to hang out and drink.
Well, yeah,
I'm trying to figure out like at what point like are art directors kind of expecting to be seeing people all weekend?
Yes.
Would they rather people
Yes.
hold off till Sunday when the business is sort of concluded?
So-
I'm trying to sort of gauge.
It's changed too.
where-
So Gen Con used to have a portfolio sign up, and then for a while the art directors just weren't here.
Yeah.
And
There's
then when they were here, they had to work at their designated company booths.
Yeah.
So if you could walk up to a company booth, and a lot of it's still kind of that way. You can walk up to a company booth and ask politely if there's an art director,
Yeah.
and if they have like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Um,
the other thing is make sure you have leave behinds, because a lot of
Yes.
times, especially
At
the
least a
smaller
business
companies,
card.
they can't break away. So
Yeah.
the best thing to do is like have like a business card and like, can you talk now? Otherwise, is there a better time? If not,
Yeah.
From my
here's my
perspective,
stuff.
I'm here to work, and
Yeah.
so I'm
Yeah.
here to see people, and so I will always see anyone that
Yeah, I
comes.
guess I just want to sort of. I know I've found that some of the people who do their running to try and do 6 things at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, you know, at what point is like, have they sort of made enough sales to kind of get the booth into the black, and they're a little less like, yeah, we can take a minute or.
Yeah.
I've got a couple things to add to this.
Yeah.
So one thing at conventions, there's always lulls. So if you're at a convention attending, you can walk. If you see an art director, if you see companies really bogged down, like just don't bother with it, or ask one of the people. It's like, is the art director around, or when will they be around? But like, there's usually a lull where an art director you can talk to them and approach them and that sort of thing, and it'll always be good. But as far as like leave behinds are really important. One of the things that I've found it has been most effective for me is talking to an art director, and like Kat and Lucas have said, is like just getting face-to-face time with them,
Yeah.
and then after the show, going and following up with them, and,
Yeah.
and being like, hey, I met you, this was my work, like, and
Yeah.
it'll usually jog their memory enough. They're not gonna.
That's-
If you're
that's
looking
like
for somebody
Christmas card.
afterwards, like the Hyatt bar or the Westin bars are usually it's
Yeah.
honestly where people go to hang out.
Yeah.
At least for a little bit.
But
so.
yeah, the very first thing I ever do after a con is at Monday. As soon as I wake up in the morning and have my coffee, I start
Sending
emailing
emails, yep.
out. And like what I do is like, you are like the prime example. Everybody follow her example, because I always take notes. Especially if you're gonna do a portfolio review with an art director,
Yep.
bring a notepad, because one, you're more serious, but two, especially at a convention, so much stuff goes on, you'll forget, they're gonna forget.
Art directors sometimes forget
Even-
even business cards too.
Yeah, and like what I do is like, if somebody approaches me for stuff,
I'm right there with you. I've got my
Yeah.
notebook
I
with
always
me.
tell them to
always.
email me, or like if you have a business card or even a scrap of paper that's got a place where you can write on it, I always jot down a note on a business card that somebody will hand me, like, okay, we talked about this, I'll do this. And sometimes they're actually really good, and they'll email me during the show, because, you know, phone technology is awesome, you can do that. That's also good, not so much for the art directors, but if you're an art director or a game developer and you're approaching an artist, it's fine to send us an email during a show. We're probably not gonna see it until we get home and
Right.
can go through stuff, but it's great because it's kinda like taking a note. It's like, hey, I know you're not gonna see this probably till, you know, next week, but I'm so-and-so, I talked to you about this, looking forward to hearing from you.
Yeah,
It's
I
something
leave.
short and simple, yeah.
I leave shows with on average 20 to 30 business cards,
Mm-hmm.
and so I go home and I put them on my desk, and I'm like, I'll get to that later.
but it's also good then, like another thing that we tell people is
Yeah.
leave behinds then.
Right.
And some people will bring a postcard, so it's like you put the stack down, and it's like, but that guy's bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
Over here.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah,
you know,
if I
like,
get-
I
if I get an
think-
email, then I go, oh, who's? I'll go back to
Yeah.
my thing, and
Yeah.
So that is super.
And there are some really creative leave behinds too.
Yeah.
Like you can look around on the internet, and graphic designers are excellent for their leave behinds. Not gonna lie,
Yeah.
because their product,
Um.
they're doing product stuff. So, you know, that's more important for them to have weird product leave behinds. But it's great as any artist to really check out what they're doing, because you can find quirky leave behinds, or if you are really researching your art directors, going back to like targeting on a specific art director, you can find out what their taste, interest, and if they have collectibles of stuff is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Target in on that.
Right.
And, yeah, but
they work.
There was
yeah,
a
but on the flip side, be careful with how you do it because you don't want it to appear like you're.
you shouldn't overshadow your art.
Yeah, but you don't want to make it seem like I'm giving you don't make it an expensive gift.
Yeah.
Make it a smart
The-
leave behind.
the best-
but,
Unless
yeah.
you want it to be a really expensive gift, really nice.
But-
What kind of hard liquor do you like?
I sculpted this bust for
But like,
you.
the best portfolio I have ever seen was a guy actually brought he handmade envelopes.
Yeah,
Like
talking about Jabari.
This guy, we had never heard of him before.
No.
Like we went to this convention. This guy showed up with handmade hand paper envelopes with like stamped things
He
or
made his own seal.
wax seals with like personalized to every art director he talked to.
Wow.
And every single piece that he had in the portfolio was targeted directly to that art director.
Wow, that's
And
impressive.
not only did he impress every art director, every artist knew his name because
Yeah.
of that. So I mean, that's like the power of like not only having
Yeah, we'll come to you. It
yeah.
doesn't matter if you're an artist or an art director. If there's something fancy and shiny,
Yeah.
we're drawn to it. Like,
yeah.
Really
this,
quick Cupids.
yeah.
Yeah. So we have about 3 minutes left. Does anyone have any quick questions before we?
I'm up for also answering stuff outside too.
Yeah,
Like,
we'll
I'll
be in
stick
the
around
artist
for
alley.
sure. Yeah.
We're right next to each other.
Yeah.
Table what 19
Yes.
and 20.
This is a quick question.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's a standard like production schedule or turnaround time?
Good question.
Like,
It's
process,
different.
Like you get the job, you sign the contract.
It's different for everything,
Yeah.
but
I did a whole board game in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Killed
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah.
but did it.
But a lot of times with Spirit Island, what I'll do is I go, okay, this is my grand timeline, and I have this many artists, and I have to figure out how quickly each of those artists work, because the last thing I want to do is rush them. Also, so I usually give about a month lead time
Mhm.
with. I'll start with like a month for 5 pieces. If they give me 5 pieces in a week, then I go, oh, they can probably handle 10 in a month,
Yeah.
do it pretty
Yeah.
easily. And so it is just like a working relationship type
But
thing.
as an artist, don't do that unless you can.
Yeah.
You know? A lot of
Your standard
artists.
should be about two weeks.
Yeah.
at
Well,
least.
not even that, but a lot of artists will be like, they offered me 6, and even if it's kind of a month deadline, they'll be like, I'm only gonna take 2 because you can spend more time on those.
Yeah.
But and yeah,
Quality,
like
quality is better than quantity.
yes, yeah.
Always.
Unless you can do it, unless you can peel those out and have them be quality, then absolutely do it. But like even then, like I had to talk to you guys about the deadline
Mhm.
because there was a bunch of weird funky stuff in there, and actually on my end I wound up shortening it by 4 days because I wasn't have access to my computer to scan or any of that. So know what you can handle.
Can we get one?
Do we have
Yeah, I think last one.
It's not a question, it's
Yeah.
a comment.
Okay.
I have been teaching for 27 years. I teach high school art and
Excellent.
a lot of students that I gear this direction. I want to first of all say this was excellent,
Thank you.
beautiful stuff. I feel like I'm on the right track with my kids.
Fantastic.
I just want to say that this was a wonderful presentation and I want to compliment all of you for
Oh
helping.
my gosh. Thank you guys.